We have breaking news in our politics lead. New allegations against Maine Democratic Senate candidate Graham Platner, this time from a handful of women who previously dated him. The New York Times interviewed 6 of these women, 3 of whom described their relationships with Platner as volatile and toxic. The Times adds that these women accused Platner of heavy drinking and infidelity, demeaning behavior toward women, and in one account, physical intimidation. In a statement to CNN, Platner says, quote, "Throughout this campaign, I've been open about what was a very dark period of my life where I struggled with undiagnosed PTSD, too often self-medicated with alcohol, and was a far from perfect boyfriend. I take responsibility for all of that and wish I had been better. Any characterization beyond that is false, and I believe politically motivated. I'm not proud of who I was then, but I am proud of the work I've done since and the movement we are building in Maine," unquote. The panel joins me now, and Robert Bluey. We should note that Lindsay Fifield, who is one of the 3 named, for want of a better word, accusers of Graham Platner, and in fact suggests that he, in addition to being emotionally abusive, was sometimes physically tough. I don't want to know what word, but grabs her by the shoulders, leaves marks, etc. You know her. You've worked with her. She is a Republican activist. Do you find her to be a credible person?
I do. I think it took a tremendous amount of courage for Lindsay to come forward and tell this story, along with the other women who are now speaking out. I was Lindsay's boss for many years at the Heritage Foundation prior to my role at the Daily Signal today. And Lindsay and I think many of the other women are doing something that they feel is important now, Jake, because frankly, the voters of Maine need to make a decision. And that decision is going to have big implications about whether Graham Platner is going to move forward. And I think these past allegations need to be thoroughly vetted.
Yeah, and just to note, Tuesday is the Democratic primary in Maine, and the current governor, former candidate Janet Mills, is still on the ballot. So, Mo, in terms of Lindsay Fifield, she denies any political motivation. She says she would be doing this even if he were a Republican as opposed to Democrat. The Times says she dated him from about 2013 to 2015. The Times writes, quote, "Mr. Platner could be rough with her," Ms. Fifield said, "particularly when they were drinking, leaving her shaken and sometimes afraid. She was quick to note that he never hit me, he never punched me, but during one argument, she recalled, he twisted her arm behind her back, shoved her into a bedroom, and held the door closed from the other side so she couldn't get out, telling her to remain there until she was calm. Mr. Platner strongly disputes any claims of physical intimidation or altercations," his campaign said. What do you think this is going to have any impact?
I don't know. I mean, if the past decade has taught us anything, you don't know what voters are willing to forgive and not forgive in politics anymore. I think, as a former campaign strategist, the drip, drip, drip is exhausting, and it can really hurt a campaign, which is why I think some of the senators he met with this week in Washington asked him, "Is there anything else coming out?"
Before this came out. He's also denied to, like Manu Raju and plenty of other reporters, that was it. That there was nothing else coming out, and more came out.
Right. Look, the story talked to a lot of women. Many said good things about him. Some said bad things about him. I don't deny any woman's lived experience.
Yeah.
If this is their experience, we should take that seriously. I also am sympathetic to someone who has dealt with mental health issues and has been working through it. This is the argument now. This is the decision Maine voters are going to have to make. Do they trust that, however dark that period may have been in his life, that he has turned a corner and he can be an effective advocate for them? We'll know next week.
So Lindsay Fifield also spoke with the Times about Platner's now covered up tattoo, the skull and crossbones from the SS. It's called a Totenkopf. And Platner has said recently that he didn't know what it was until recently. He thought it was just a skull and crossbones. He got well in the service. But Lindsay Fifield says, well, let me just read the Times. Mr. Platner's insistence that he did not know that his tattoo was a Nazi symbol until it became a campaign issue last fall was simply not true, Ms. Fifield said. After all, she said, he had taught her the word for it years earlier, referring to it as my Totenkopf. His campaign strongly denied that he knew what the tattoo stood for. So this goes to not just who he was back in his 20s or 30s, but whether or not he's being honest with voters today.
No, it certainly does. And in the wake of the recent allegations that have come out around sexting with women, even after he was married, I don't necessarily know how he recovers politically from this. Yet, poll after poll shows that he's consistently led. Now, we should point out that 6 years ago, Sarah Gideon was also leading Susan Collins consistently in all the polls leading up to Election Day. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how Susan Collins decides to play this, and whether she ignores it or whether or not this becomes an issue that she starts to emphasize in the closing days here. Obviously, she would go up against a weakened individual in Platner should he emerge victorious in Tuesday's primary.
And Mo, right now, Senator John Fetterman, Democrat of Pennsylvania, is urging voters, Democrats in Maine, to support Janet Mills, the current governor, who was running in the primary, and then because of the meteoric rise of Platner, who, to give him his due, clearly has caught on with a lot of voters and is charismatic and can command a room and is, fiery progressive. And Mills was not able to raise money, so she put her campaign on hold. But she's been reminding people recently, hey, I'm still on the ballot, and Fetterman's saying, Democrats in Maine, you should vote for Janet Mills. What do you think?
We'll find out on Tuesday what they're going to do.
No, but what would you?
If I were a Maine
Democrat,
if I were a Maine voter, I would probably vote for Janet Mills. But I'm not the target audience, right? I'm a DC establishment Democrat, and that's part of the challenge for people like Janet Mills.
Right, Platner's running against you.
Platner's running against me, right? He's running against the establishment Democrats as much as he's running against Donald Trump, and that's got some appeal. And it explains why, to your point that this is all very recent, that some of these issues, same can be said about Ken Paxton in Texas, and yet voters in Maine, Democratic voters in Maine, Republican voters in Texas seem to be willing to forgive or at the very least overlook these flawed candidates because they are so fed up with the establishment, they're so hungry for someone who they think is going to fight for them that they're willing to overlook these issues.
Look at Los Angeles as well. I mean, Spencer Pratt, wasn't it just last week we were talking about some past comments that he made, and would that have an impact necessarily on what Los Angeles voters decided to do? And I think that they were enough voters in Los Angeles appear to be frustrated with the establishment politician, Karen Bass, that they were willing to give a reality TV star an opportunity to maybe make the runoff.
Are you surprised at Platner's staying power? I mean, I think it's fair to say, and you could say this about Donald Trump and his many controversies too, that in a different era with a different candidate, just the Totenkopf would have ended his campaign.
Yeah, I'm not surprised by anything after the last decade. I mean, that's the honest truth, is that people right now, as I said, are willing to forgive or overlook a lot because they're that angry. And if you can channel that anger, then you got a shot.
Interesting. Thanks to both of you. Really appreciate it. Coming up next.